right, so good afternoon, everyone. It is 1:15, so we're going to get started. For anybody listening in online, please do write in and let us know if you have any issues with hearing, with the audio. But without further ado, I'm going to get started. So this is one of the really the most introductory beginner level sessions that you're going to have here today at REDCap Day. And in part, we wanted to offer this because we found that the theme of surveys was coming up quite a bit across the different presentations. And we also wanted to provide something that would be um, sort of introductory. Yesterday, I gave a live Zoom session webinar on a tutorial of getting started with REDCap, and that went through basically setting up a project, an instrument in REDCap, and then creating some different field types and working with some functionality like branching logic. And so that could be seen as the kind of the degree of familiarity that you would want to have behind what we're going to talk about today. In other words, you don't need to have much more familiarity with REDCap than that, but it does help if you've used REDCap before in some capacity. This is going to be pretty intro level, as I say, but we should have plenty of time. I'm going to do a little bit of a demo presentation and point out a few different aspects of functionality, but I would really be happy to have questions from you. And at that point, those questions can go into more advanced functionality or setup for surveys. So don't feel like you need to leave the questions or the discussion at a beginner level. So that's the part of the presentation that can be aimed at whatever your level is at with surveys, and that includes people who are listening and online. So feel free to put questions in the chat, and there will be the possibility for me to unmute you at the end during the Q&A session, so that you'll be able to hear what people in the room are asking to try to bring you into that discussion. But there is also the possibility, especially if not many people have questions, that you may get some of your time back. It's not a very lengthy session, so I hope you're not too disappointed if you have a little extra time before the next sessions. But this is the agenda, such as it is. So building and configuring REDCap surveys. Again, this is in general terms. Sending survey invitations. The survey queue we'll just touch on briefly. A survey project demo where we can basically just walk through some of these aspects of functionality and point you towards where to look for some of them. And then a Q&A section. So I do have first a couple of basic intro slides to what is REDCap, and these are provided by Vanderbilt. These are just descriptions of what it is. So research electronic data capture, and you're probably familiar with most of these aspects of REDCap. This is putting it in a little more formal language, but basically these are things that REDCap provides for your projects. So you've got an intuitive interface, meaning REDCap is providing an accessible user interface that's friendly. That's not just at the level of internal data entry personnel working on the project, but also in terms of surveys, audit trails. So that's going to be logging. And again, this is going to connect to surveys because you're going to get all of the audit trail, all of the logging information when surveys are getting completed and submitted. Whenever participants are filling out surveys, you're going to have all of their data stored not only in the actual record devoted to them in the database, but you're also going to have all of their information placed into the logging application in the project. So that's going to provide an audit trail continually. I mentioned that. I'm just going to make a quick digression that's a little more advanced, but just to point out that that's going to be very useful if somebody makes a mistake at some point of deleting some survey data. If somebody submitted a response and you just need the data that they submitted, you can look in the logging application and it should still be there. So there's not an easy way to recover deleted data in REDCap typically, but the audit trail is where you can find a lot of that information and then go and re-enter it. And then automated export procedures for data downloads to statistical packages. So again, once you've collected the data via the survey, you're then able to export it in these different package formats. And then procedures for data integration and interoperability with external sources. You've got the REDCap API. You have a data connector to Tableau. And so again, when REDCap started out, it was initially internal data entry only. Surveys were a feature that was added later. And you've already heard today about 21 CFR Part 11 and the REDCap Consortium. These are all different field types that you're going to make use of in your instruments. And this is going to be whether it's a survey or internal data entry or whether it's a MyCap task. Most of these are pretty straightforward, pretty much do what you would expect them to do from the title. But there's a lot to explore here, and it's worth taking them all in, trying them all out at different times, because it will help your survey design immensely if you're making use of the yes no fields for true false fields, for example, rather than recreating that every time as a separate multiple choice field, or file upload fields, making use of descriptive text fields. Those are all going to be helpful. The section headers, those are going to be useful if you want to do a multi-page survey. So rather than have one lengthy survey form that scrolls up and down the page and you have 100 questions, if you want to make that more appealing to people, there's a setting in survey settings that allows you to divide up the survey by section headers. And so they'll be able to click to go to the next page based on wherever you've placed section headers in the survey. So after you create the data collection instruments, users in a project can internally enter data for those instruments, or in addition, in fact, you can also enable any instrument as a survey and then collect that data for instrument from survey, the data for that instrument from survey respondents. So the only difference is who's entering data in the project. So this is an important point, is that when you're designing your instruments in REDCap, you can collect data for a single instrument internally as a internal data entry form. Somebody can always log into a particular record, a particular form, and enter data while they're logged in as a REDCap user. And you can also have that same instrument enabled as a survey form to be able to send out to people to take in survey mode. And the reason that I underline that is because there may be cases where you need to have different modes of collecting that data from participants. So some people may have email addresses that you're able to send them an email, and that's no trouble. Other people may be coming in, they need to come into the clinic. You're not able to reach them otherwise through the survey invitation. That's fine. You're able to log into the REDCap project on your device, locate their particular record or create it, and then do that as internal data entry. You could also open it in survey mode for them and have them complete it as a survey. But the point is that both of those options are available to you. And I will just note there's actually a third option, which is MyCap. So that's using a mobile device app that it's basically like surveys, but the participants are accessing and filling out their tasks. That's the word for MyCap enabled instruments. They're filling that out within the MyCap app. That's definitely worth taking a look into if you haven't yet. When you are new to surveys and you're creating a new REDCap project, or sometimes even if you're not new to surveys, select to use one of the survey templates. So you've got several different project creation options in when you go to create a new project in REDCap. One of them is a blank slate, and that's fine if you want to use that. But over the past few years, these templates have expanded quite a bit. So there's quite a few different templates available, sometimes highlighting particular aspects of REDCap functionality. So even if it's not a case of you need to look for a template for your project you're working on now, but maybe it's you just want to familiarize yourself with possibilities for different types of REDCap functionality or different types of project structure. So, for example, there's a template now even for randomized clinical trials, and you can see what that get a sense for what the setup for that type of project would be. But here I've just highlighted a couple of these multiple survey templates. After you create a new project, as soon as you create a new project, you're going to immediately be taken to the project setup page. And that project setup page is designed as a checklist that you're able to use from top to bottom to walk you through the entire design and setup process for the REDCap project. There's even that button where you can click and say, I'm done, as you basically check off each of these aspects of design and setup. And so that's designed to help introduce you to the process of design and setup, and also to increase your confidence that you haven't missed something along the way. So definitely make use of that project setup page as a checklist. And it's designed to think about the highest level functionality at the top. So the main project settings, the very first thing to think about when you've created this new project in REDCap are these main project settings. And in fact, there's now the third one below those two that you see there, which is, do you want to use MyCap in this project? But the first two are use surveys in the project and use longitudinal data collection with defined events. And so you're going to enable the use of surveys. And be sure to do that before you move the project to production mode. If you wait until you move the project to production mode, a REDCap admin has to enable the use of surveys for you if you haven't already enabled that. And so once you've enabled the use of surveys, you'll now see under data collection there on the left, you'll see this survey distribution tools option open up. And so the next step, as you'll see on the project setup page, will be to do the actual design of the project instruments. And typically you're going to use Online Designer for that. There is also the data dictionary where you can work out of a spreadsheet. That's especially useful if you want to make sort of mass updates to several different forms, or you want to change a number of forms all at once in some particular way. This or that, but it's not typically what you're going to want to use to build the project from the ground up. Once you've built these instruments, then you can select to enable them as surveys. And once you've done so, you'll see that there's that little green check mark shield saying enabled as survey. And in fact, when you select to enable an instrument as a survey, it will take you to the survey settings page. And you'll definitely, initially, you can just click to save changes if you want to just use the default settings at first. But you will definitely want to review those survey settings. There's a lot of customizability and different survey-related functionality you'll want to think about. So you've created the survey instruments, and now you want to think about, how do I want to send these out? So first of all, there's two basic ways of sending out surveys in REDCap, and there's a lot more that we can get into in terms of more advanced functionality or details about the process as we go along. But the basic question you want to ask yourself is, am I sending out these survey invitations via a public survey link, or am I sending them out as targeted, participant-specific survey invitations? So this is just the sort of default where you're sending out survey emails. The public survey link, that can only be for the first instrument, which has to be enabled as a survey. So the first survey and the first instrument in a project. And that's going to be one URL that's going to give access to that initial survey. And if you think about it, because oftentimes people will come back with the question, why can't I have a public survey link for each of the different survey instruments in my project? Because it's a public survey URL, meaning one URL anybody can access publicly, every time that survey gets submitted, it's creating a new record. in the REDCap project. So if you had a sort of public survey to one of the later surveys in that project, it would be creating a new record. It would no longer be tied to the initial survey. So you wouldn't have that continuity of data across one record. So if for whatever reason you're doing some surveys and your workflow is such that you need to have one survey with a public survey link, and you want it to create a new record every time it gets submitted, and then you have another survey that you have a similar situation, then you want to just make those as two separate REDCap projects. Those are just going to be two separate collections of data, two separate sets of participants effectively. But then the second way of doing it is to send these individual targeted emails via the participant list. And so these two can exist in tandem. So you can have the initial survey, the record creation via the public survey link. But then once you've created this, this record, the participant has created a record in the database, you can then, in that initial survey, you can collect their email address. You can designate that email address to be used for survey invitations in the project. And then that email address, when it gets submitted, when it gets collected, it's going to auto-populate to this participant list. And you'll then be able to send out any follow-up surveys via the participant list using that email address that's been collected. So the second set of things that you want to think about is you can automate the sending of survey invitations, and you can also enable them to be completable and even sent out over indefinitely repeating instances. So maybe you want to send out a survey weekly to someone. That's something that you're able to do via this repeating instance functionality. Automating it, so that's something that you can not only send out surveys at a particular time, but you can also conditionally send surveys. So let's say you want to send out a second or third survey in the project, and you want it only to send to those people who met some particular category or entered some particular value. Let's say there's an age limit. So this survey should only go out to people who are aged over 18. This other survey should go out to people aged under 18, something like that. And so you're able to select to automate the sending of surveys only to a particular group of participants. So if your first data collection is enabled as a survey, you can use a public survey link. So that's a single link that's emailed to all participants or even posted on a website. And so you can see this is the public survey link tab, which opens up when you click on survey distribution tools. And I want to point out that I strongly recommend, and I believe with our recent upgrade 2 weeks ago, I think this is now checked by default actually, but in the past it was not. So make a point of checking when you first open up this public survey link tab, you want to check that option to protect the public survey using the Google reCAPTCHA feature. That's to help prevent bot responses. There is no certain way to protect from bot responses using a public survey link. So if you post a link anywhere publicly, it is possible for bots and other pretend responses, fake responses, multiple responses also, that's something that you want to be conscious of, to get submitted. So that is always one advantage of using the individual targeted participant list responses, is that you have more control, more security over who's making those responses, how often those responses happen, et cetera. More ability to track where that's coming from. Whereas with public survey link, submissions could be from anywhere and could be multiple times. Using the participant list, so this is the second tab, you can use this for emailing your recipients and also to track who has taken your survey. And so there's an option here that you want to be aware of. You see there's a button there for participant identifier, optional, and it says enable or disable. If you want to be able to have your surveys be non-anonymous, meaning if you want the email address to be listed there in the left column, and then you want to see the record ID once they submit a response, and you want to be able to connect that email to that particular record, you want to make sure that that participant identifier is enabled, because you will not be able to do that retroactively. So if you have it disabled initially and you start collecting data using the participant list, and it's not showing you the records, you're not then going to be able to go and de-anonymize the survey. The idea of this participant identifier being disabled is that it provides anonymity. You're able to track that there has been a response from this email address, but you're not able to track which record, which response it is. So that's a great feature if you want an anonymous survey while still using this emailing participant list. But it is something you want to be aware of, that it's not something you'll be able to go back and identify some particular record as being associated with some particular email address after the fact, unless there's something to identify it in the survey itself. And you can see there that there are these buttons to add participants. That's where you would click to add email addresses, and you can even copy paste if you have a whole list of email addresses. One click, copy paste all of those emails one after the other on separate lines, and that will add them all to the participant list. And then you would click the Compose Survey Invitations button to send those survey invites. Designated emails, so we've talked about this a bit already. So on the project setup page, you can designate an email field for the sending of survey invitations. And just to clarify what it means by an email field, when I showed you those field types earlier, one of them was the text box. In fact, it was the first, the most widely used field type in REDCap. So because it's so multi-purpose, so it's a small text box, but you're going to use, when you set up that field, a validation. So there's a drop down that says validation, and I don't know why there's a question mark really, because any time that you can validate that text box, you want to validate it for data quality purposes, data consistency purposes. So you'll see in that validation dropdown that there's an email option. And that's going to not only help with data consistency, because participants will be prompted that they need to use an email format for that field, but it's also going to assist with this participant list process, because it allows REDCap to recognize that field as being an email field it can make use of. Actually, I will go back for just a moment just to mention this point. So you can also designate, or in addition, you can designate a survey-specific email field in the particular survey instrument survey settings page. So this is an important point, which is a relatively recent new feature, is that in the past you just had one project-level designated email field, and any emailed survey invitations had to go to that email. But now you can actually override that using this survey-specific email field option. So if you need to collect data and be sending survey invitations back and forth with a participant, but then let's say you need to send some of that information, or you need to send some other survey to some other person, let's say some provider, some psychiatrist, someone else who's interacting with that same participant and that same records data, then you're able to send a particular survey to a different email address. So Twilio and Mozio, these are two third-party services that are integrated with REDCap. And they are, you do have to pay for these, unlike almost everything else associated with REDCap. If you want to use these, they are on a subscription or funding model. Each of them is a different company with a different funding model, and some differences in terms of account setup, et cetera. So REDCap offers both of them, and there are some minor advantages or disadvantages to each of them. And so I encourage you to look into each of them if you're interested in sending out surveys via SMS, which is what each of these are doing. So I sort of described all of that backward. The point of these two services is that it allows you to send out survey invitations using SMS text messaging. Now, it is possible, at least for Twilio, it's possible to actually send out survey invitations where you're initiating the survey invitation itself in text message, like they'll get a text message with each of the questions. That's something that Twilio offers. That's not something IU REDCap offers. So I mention that because if you come across it somewhere, in documentation at some other institution, something like that, it's not something we offer for security purposes. We only offer the ability to send the actual survey invitation itself via text message. And somebody will receive the message. It'll have a link saying, please take this survey. And then they can click on it on the link and it'll open up in their browser on their mobile device. But it won't actually display the survey form itself via SMS. And so this is for survey invitations, but I will note here that it's also possible to send alerts and notifications to recipients via SMS using either of these services. And that's relevant to this particular topic because you can also send survey links via alerts and notifications. Automated survey invites, alerts and notifications, and repeating survey invitations. So we've talked a little bit about this, that you can send these automated survey invitations via Designer. You can also be sending these survey links using alerts, using smart variables. And then they can also be sent as indefinitely repeatable with invitations automated on a recurring basis. And so in that case, you'll be sending out, let's say you'll set it up to send out 5 different instances of this particular survey on some basis, weekly, for example. And so each week somebody will get the survey invitation, and when they open up the link, it'll be to a new instance of that same form. It will not be the same instance or copy of the survey that they've already completed. So the survey queue, there's actually a lot one could get into in describing some of the setup for this, but the basic concept of the survey queue is that it's going to display a list of your surveys to a participant all on a single page. And that's going to be vary by, it's going to vary by 2 things. One, it's going to show whether or not it's been completed or not. And then like a to-do list. And then it's also going to allow for you to display those conditionally so that one participant will see a particular set of surveys that they need to take. Someone else will see a different set of surveys. So this goes back to conditional logic that you're going to use in the survey queue, as we mentioned before, where you could have an age field and you can condition it so that one survey is made available to people over 18 and another to people under 18, that sort of thing, or to any other conditional value in the project. And also if they've completed a particular survey. So that's an important point as well, is you're able to condition it so that they only see a particular survey in their survey queue once they've completed some other survey in their survey queue. Sometimes you don't want them to be able to fill out all the surveys at once. They need to have completed some previous survey to see the next set of surveys, that sort of thing. All right, so see if it. All right, so I have to log in once again. All right, good. So we're going to just walk through a little bit of this. Project title, we'll call it survey demo. You always need to put a purpose for the survey in this case, or for the project. Project notes, empty, use a template. All right, so we are going to use this multiple surveys classic option. We're going to create the project. Here is that project setup page. And because I used this survey template, you've already got the use of surveys in this project enabled. If we go to designer here, we'll see this is where you would go to set up and create your instruments. In this case, again, because we're using the template, you can see there's already 3 instruments that are enabled as surveys, whereas this fourth one is to be entered by study personnel only, meaning it's only for internal data entry, so it has not been enabled as a survey. This is, you would click here to enable or disable an instrument as a survey, and then there's the survey settings for this particular survey instrument. And so just to walk through a few of these, you'll see there's some basic survey setup options, the title, the instructions that you want to put at the top of the page. So that doesn't need to be within the form itself. That's something you can set up in the survey settings. You've got various design options to customize the appearance of it. And just note for testing purposes that when you go to look at the form, whatever these survey settings, these design options that you've selected, if you go to view the form internally, you're not going to see those. It's only when you open the survey in survey mode as a survey that you'll see these design options, however you've set it up. And so font size, there's various themes that you can choose from. And various other customizations, question numbering, pagination. So this is what I was referring to earlier when I mentioned displaying one section per page, so across multiple pages. A significant option here is to allow participants to download a PDF of their responses at the end of the survey. Survey-specific email field. So you can see in this case, there's one field that's been validated already for email, and so it's allowing you to select that as an option. There's various other customization options. Survey access, you're going to want to think about. You can set a response limit, a time limit for survey completion. And then this is maybe the most important of these, practically speaking, is this section on allow, save, and return later option for respondents. And you'll see there's really 3 different questions here. Do you want to allow participants to be able to save and return to the survey at all? Yes or no? Do you want them to be able to respond without needing a return code, or do they need to have a return code? And then do you want to allow them to return and modify completed responses or only partial responses? Because it's much more common. You do want to give them the opportunity to be able to click save and then go back and finish up the survey later. But sometimes you actually want to let them even go back and change their completed results. These options are something that can be altered. So if you sent out an invitation and initially you were requiring that they could not modify completed responses, if you go back and you check this box allowing them to modify completed responses, they should then be able to use their survey link that they already have to go back in and access that and make changes. But of course, checking one of these options does mean that it's being checked for all of the records. Survey termination options, and I just want to note here, because we talked about the survey queue is going to give you more options for making the flow of the surveys conditional. It's going to give you more sort of granular control over that. But at a basic level, if there's just some very simple condition, for example, the age greater than 30 and sex equals 1. So if it's a sort of simple condition like that, you're able to include that in this auto continue. So auto continue, this is going to be a question about if you have a series of surveys, what do you want to have happen after they complete one survey? Is it going to stop and then you need to send them the next one? Or is it going to flow directly into the next survey? So that is an option, that one survey can auto continue into the next one. but you can still add some conditional logic for that, such that it auto continues for some participants and not others. You can also redirect to a URL after they finish the survey, or you can just put some survey completion text. There are survey stop actions, which if anyone's has particular interest in that, we can talk more about that. But and then there's this option of a confirmation email. So just to email the respondent when they complete the survey. And you can include attachments there, but they have recently put this helpful warning here, which is just that email is not a secure form of communication. So be careful about sending someone a PDF of their responses if you have any identifying data in there. Right. I'm going to save changes. Well, actually, scroll back up to the top because one thing I did not mention is survey status here. So up here at the top of survey settings, this is where you're going to set whether the survey is active or offline. So sometimes it happens that somebody sends out a survey despite the fact that, hopefully you've tested everything thoroughly, but let's say you send things out, there's a mistake, there's some problem with the survey, and you've already sent out invitations, but you don't want people to be able to access this anymore. If you come into survey settings for that survey and you take it offline, immediately it will be inaccessible to anybody. No one will be able to submit responses at that point. And you can add an offline message to explain and say, oh, this is temporary and it'll be back. Try again soon afterward, this sort of thing. There's various survey options here. So there's options related to e-consent, the e-consent framework. Some of you, I'm sure, were in the e-consent discussion this morning, but basically that allows you to set up e-consenting for surveys. There's the survey queue here that we've talked about, and this is what it would look like. So there are options about, do you want to allow the survey queue to be visible or do you want to hide it? And then you're able to select particular forms. So the survey queue doesn't have to be set up for every form in the project. You can make it available on a survey by survey basis, but you'll be able to select these particular conditions for when somebody can access a survey from their survey queue. These are auto invitation options for setting up. Upload. Oh, here it is. So if you want to automate invitations, it'll be over to the right here of whichever survey you want. And this is what the setup will look like. You can set the various conditions here. A survey needs to be completed. There's the logic that needs to become true. And then when to send the invitations. You can set survey reminders. And so just to clarify, these reminders here, this is something different from the repeating instances that I mentioned. If you have surveys set up as repeating instances, it's actually a new instance every time. These reminders are just a reminder email sending the same survey invitation link, the link to the same instance of the survey, if somebody hasn't completed the survey yet. So you can send it up to 5 times, just reminding them, please complete this survey. And as you can see, there are options here about when it should be sent. It can be sent based on some particular date field in the project. It can, one of the classic examples being you want to send a particular survey so many days before a particular visit, patient interaction, or so many days afterward, this sort of thing, et cetera. Survey login is an option where you can actually use some particular value from a field to be used as a login, so that when they get the survey invitation, they'll be prompted to log in with that particular value. Otherwise, it won't let them access the survey. So that could be, for example, email address, and they need to enter the correct email address, or date of birth, something like that. And then finally, survey notifications. This is something useful because I've seen sometimes people actually thinking they need to go and set up an alert to try to get notifications. This is a really simple setup for any users on the project who need to be notified when a survey gets submitted. Survey notifications will allow you to select the particular survey and select the email of the person or people who should get a notification that it was submitted. Over here in Survey Distribution Tools, we've got the public survey link. So as it turns out, it is not enabled by default yet. I think that's coming in the next upgrade. And so you will definitely want to make sure to protect it with that. But as you can see here, there are options for customizing your public survey link. Get a short version, create a custom one. You can also get QR codes or survey access codes. The participant list, this is where you would go. You can click on, so let's say you've got all your responses from the initial survey, and so the records have been created. For a follow-up survey, you can then navigate from this drop-down to the follow-up survey, and then go and compose survey invitations for that next survey. Finally, here's the survey invitation log, which is going to list all of the past survey invitations that have been sent out in the project, and also any upcoming survey invitations that are scheduled to be sent out but haven't sent out yet. That's useful for reference for all sorts of things. It's also useful because sometimes people send out a survey invitation, not send out a survey invitation, but sometimes it's scheduled, and then something changes where you decide you don't want to actually send that survey invitation. It's already been scheduled to get sent out. Maybe you set up some automated condition. It's scheduled to be sent, a few days from now, and then you say, wait a minute, I don't want to send this survey invitation out to the participant. You can come to this survey invitation log. It's going to show you any future invitations, and you'll be able to check over here to select those particular survey invitations, and you'll be able to select to delete all selected. So that's useful. You will not, you won't be able to sort of unschedule surveys. So if you have like an automated survey invitation set up and it has particular conditions for when it's going to schedule to send, but it still hasn't sent yet, if you change the values that caused it to be scheduled, that's not going to deschedule it. It's already scheduled. It's already ready to go. So if you do need to make sure it doesn't send, you would need to come in here and delete that upcoming invitation. And then you can manually resend it to the participant when they should receive it. So those are survey distribution tools. Let's see what else might be relevant. So let me go back to project setup. Here is where you would go to enable repeating instruments. You'd be able to select a particular instrument as indefinitely repeatable. And I think if there's any other significant functionality to note, I think we will stop there in terms of the demo and go to the question and answer section. So if anybody either in person here or online has Q&A, this is the time, and I'm going to unmute the ceiling microphones so that anyone listening in online is able to hear any questions asked in the room. Unfortunately, people who are online, we're not able to hear you, but we should be able to have any questions that you type into chat read out, and then I can respond to them. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute the ceiling mic. And if anybody in person or online has questions, this is the time to let us know. Yes.
Are there any mistakes that you users continue to make from your observations, or what are things to pay special attention as a new user.
Right. So hopefully everyone online heard that, but in any case, I'll repeat it just in case. The question was about are there any common mistakes that users make related to surveys? And I've actually included a number of those, sort of mentioning some of those throughout the presentation where there are common mistakes or misunderstandings. I think the key, what comes to mind is really just that you want to, in REDCap, if you ever get anything in front of a real survey participant, you want to test it thoroughly. And so one mistake people will make is they'll say, oh, I've done testing, but in fact, they've just tested out, they've opened up the form internally, and they've looked at the fields themselves, and they think, all right, well, the fields look like what I would like them to look like. But in fact, you need to open it up in survey mode and submit several test records via the survey mode and make sure that you're testing every aspect of the workflow. So let's say you have a more complex workflow to the project. You've got several surveys. Maybe you're using longitudinal data collection. So you're having different sets of surveys at different time points, or you have surveys that are being sent out conditionally, as we talked about. You're using the survey queue, that sort of thing. You're going to want to test for each of those different possible variations. Imagine that you are the participant in each different, possibility in terms of their survey workflow. And so if you have at least one or two test records for each of those different possible workflows, you'll see immediately whether or not things are set up and whether things are structured and functioning as you're expecting them to. So really testing thoroughly, I think, is the most significant thing, especially with new users. And this is general to REDCap. People are usually not very confident about it. They, wish somebody could sort of look over it with them and tell them that everything is fine before they send it out and review it. And the reality is the best way to feel confident about anything that you're doing in terms of REDCap data entry, or especially sending out surveys, is just to be testing it out yourself. If you run through that possibility, you'll see immediately whether or not it's working as you expect it to and as you'd like it to, and whether it looks the way that you'd like it to. So then you can address that before going live with it. Yes.
One problem that I encountered, which maybe I should have known this, but if there's any capital letters in the address, it will send the survey to the.
All right, that's interesting. I'm not aware of that, but
So I was entering a bunch of participants, and my families didn't get the surveys, and I would contact the mom and ask her, and she's like, I never got it. Through and looked, and everything looked perfect, but I had first name capitalized as an S, told me that's how her email was, and the survey never went to her. So once I got rid of those capital letters in her email, everything was fine. We didn't know that about REDCap.
and I did not know that either. So that it's an interesting point. So the question or the comment has just been made for those listening online that in this user's experience, sending survey invitations that include capital letters in the email address causes a failure of the invitation to send, or at least to be received by the participant. And so it's something to be aware of. As I say, I wasn't aware of that particular restriction or limitation, and I almost wonder if that's more about the rules for receiving by, if it's Gmail, for example, that they may make a distinction there between capitalized or non-capitalized, whereas some other email services may not. But it's something to be aware of, and my impression is that it's safe in any case, not the capitalization, but definitely something worth testing out, being conscious of. Is there a submission in chat? No. Yes.
The answer to this.
they have received?
So there are, you could certainly set up alerts to receive an email notification. So, sorry, just for those online again, the question was about you can get survey notifications. I showed you where survey notifications were if a participant has completed a survey, but the question is about how to receive notifications if someone hasn't. And there's not a kind of straightforward functionality for that like there is for receiving notifications. And I suppose that the question is really about when you would expect them to have completed it, or once it's been sent, that you receive some kind of regular reminder, something like that the participant still has not sent it. So there isn't a kind of straightforward functionality like that. You could use alerts you could use like a date diff logic, for example, to say, if it's so many days after whatever that date value that you used to send out the invitation, for example, and then you could say, if it's so many days afterwards and the status is incomplete, then then send this alert to me to let me know that it's still the form status is incomplete, because every survey in REDCap is going to have a form status that you can reference, whether it's complete, incomplete, or a partial survey response. Yes.
Tiffany online is asking, I have also had issues with REDCap not sending Gmail addresses. Does anyone else have this issue, and is REDCap working?
So it's definitely something that we've come across, and it's something that varies. So sometimes it seems to work and sometimes it doesn't. It's difficult because a lot of the email services, are changing these filtering standards or criteria on an ongoing basis. And so I don't believe there's any sort of blanket, inability to send to Gmail addresses, but it's definitely something that does come up occasionally. And there have been some things that we've tried to do in the past that have helped, at least temporarily, but I don't know that that's foolproof, or that's always going to work perfectly. Unfortunately, we both IU REDCap, our particular instance, and even REDCap generally only have so much ability to set it up in such a way to make sure that a particular third party service accepts our emails or anyone's emails. Any other questions online or here? Well, thank you, everyone. And it's 2:08, and I believe we have until 2:20. So I'm going to be here until 2:20. So